There are a wide variety of mistakes that students typically make on LSAT test day that can lead to score cancellations or lower than desired scores, or even not being able to get into the LSAT test center itself. So today I wanted to share with you 7 of the biggest mistakes students typically make on LSAT test day in the hopes that you'll be able to avoid them yourself whenever you're taking the LSAT. One of the biggest mistakes students make is one of the most easily avoidable. It's when your name listed on your LSAT admission ticket does not match exactly the name listed on your government ID. So your first name and your last name must match exactly. If anything is misspelled on your admission ticket, you got to get that sorted out. If anything is misspelled on your government ID, you've also got to get that sorted out. So if there's a mistake, double check that now. Go on lsac.org, look at your admission ticket, make sure everything is right there. Look at your government ID, make sure that is exactly right. If you used your middle name on one and not the other, that will be a major obstacle for you getting admission to the test center. So if there's a mistake, most likely on your LSAC stuff, then contact LSAC immediately, email them, call them, get that sorted out so that you'll be all squared away for test day. You don't want to get banned from entering or blocked from entering when you could have easily avoided this beforehand. Second biggest mistake is focusing on other people before the exam or during the exam. So if you get there early and there's other people sitting around or talking about how much they prepared or how little they prepared, probably best to just steer clear of them, because you never know what they'll say. They're kind of like a wild card that could potentially stress you out in some way. So I would recommend, if you can, just kind of keep to yourself, meditate if you can, focus on your breath, do your practice warm-up questions that you'll do before entering, but do anything else just on your own, I recommend most strongly, in order to avoid any potential surprises that you might encounter. And then during the exam, other people might be going faster or slower than you are, and that might lead you to be worried a little bit about what things will be like for you if you're doing something incorrectly. You don't want to think too much about what other people are doing, because maybe they're doing things wrong. Maybe they're on a different section of the exam than you. Maybe they're doing things in a different order, or maybe they're just their pacing is just totally off and they're screwing themselves over. But because they're going too quickly or too slowly, you start second guessing yourself. So trust in your pacing, trust in your strategy, and try to just focus on yourself, your test booklet, and your own process for solving the questions. Mistake number 3 is getting bogged down on tough questions and thinking that it's the end of the world. Don't worry so much about 1 or 2 tough questions, or even 3 or 4 or 5 tough questions. It's okay to struggle with a question. When I go through a section, in particular logical reasoning, I might mark off 4, 5, or even 6 questions that I'm not 100% sure of. Maybe 1 or 2 of them I was down to 2 and I guessed, I'm not sure, but I want to maybe come back to it later. And then there's another 4 where I'm like, you know what? This is a tough, lengthy principal application or parallel question. I don't want to deal with this right now. I'm going to choose consciously to skip it and come back to it later. I will then hopefully have the time at the end of the section to come back, but I don't want to get bogged down in the moment. That is a big mistake that can destroy your performance on this section, because you don't have enough time for the perhaps easier questions that would have come later. So if you encounter a tough question, don't think it's the end of the world. The LSAT always has tough questions. Every exam, out of the 100 questions, out of the 50 or so logical reasoning questions, there's probably going to be a couple that you're going to have trouble with. There might be a couple that you're even almost certainly going to get wrong, and that's okay. You don't have to get every single question correct in order to get a top score. You can get on average about 10 questions wrong and get a 170, and you can maybe even have another 5 to 10 questions that you're down to 2 and you guess and you get lucky. So all of those are tough questions. The surprise is not there being a tough question. The surprise is just the fact that there's panic in the moment, because of course this is the real test day. But walk into test day knowing there's going to be some questions that you're going to encounter that will be tough for you. That's okay. Accept it and know that maybe these will be the couple that you get wrong, or maybe these will be the couple that you go back to at the end of the section after you deal with everything else. So don't worry too much in the moment when you encounter a tough question. It's perfectly natural. Mistake number 4, waiting until the end of the section to bubble. You have the 35-minute time constraint, and you don't want your timing to be so down to the wire that you bubble at the 5-minute warning, or you bubble when there's only a minute or 2 left. 5-minute warning could be okay. That's up to you. But you don't want to wait until the last minute or 2 to start bubbling, because maybe that's your plan in the moment, but then you get to the end of the section and you realize time runs out, or the proctor doesn't time things exactly the way that you would have. Obviously, that's something you can dispute, but you don't want to be in that situation. If it's the last minute or 2, you should have already completed bubbling for most of the questions at that point, and maybe there's just a couple left that you still will have to bubble, but so be it. But you don't want to leave anything to the last minute, because things could happen. Better to avoid a potentially problematic situation. So definitely keep that in mind. Don't bubble at the last second. Mistake number 5 is getting stressed about or stuck on a previous question or section when you've already moved on from there. So let's say you've moved on to logical reasoning and you're still worried about how games went in the previous section. Well, first of all, you don't want to go back to that section, because that's not allowed, and people get in trouble for that all the time. You also don't want to start bubbling or second guessing and erasing things from a previous section when you've already moved on to the next one, because first of all, you may not remember correctly. You may be switching from wrong to right, and also when they say you can only work on the section at hand, they really mean that. So if you're now on section 3, but you're starting to rearrange things from section 2 because maybe you think you remember what you should have bubbled, the proctors might see that. They will call you out on that. You will get in trouble for it, and your score can get voided. So you definitely don't want that sort of misconduct warning on your record. You're much better off just accepting whatever happened and moving on. Then worrying about a previous question when you've already moved on, same thing I was talking about before with getting bogged down. You're still bogged down if you're still thinking about it. You need to move on and focus at the task at hand. Worrying about a tough question isn't any more likely to make it correct for you in the end. Chalk that up to being a 50-50 or whatever it may be, and deal with the question in the moment. That is your best interest. That's what you need to worry about at that time. Mistake number 6, thinking it's all about this one test. The LSAT obviously is the most important factor in your law school admission success, but this particular LSAT administration, the one that you're scheduled for, the one you're thinking about at the moment, that's not your make or break exam. You have multiple opportunities to take the LSAT. You always have multiple opportunities. There's always another LSAT within a month or 2 that you can think about and plan for. So this exam, hopefully it'll be the one that makes it for you. But if it doesn't, that's okay. Law schools don't average multiple LSAT scores, so you can keep this exam result, whatever it is, and not have that harm your admission chances. You can always study for a retake, and that won't hurt you in any way. Obviously, you don't want to keep thinking about the exam and having to keep studying for it for another couple months, but having that next LSAT administration on the calendar, maybe even registering for it in advance, not knowing whether you'll need it or not, could give you the peace of mind to let go of the stakes associated with this particular exam, reduce the stakes a bit, and then lower your stress levels and improve your performance in the end. So definitely think about the future LSAT administrations that are available to you. If you're taking it in November, you have January and March to think about. If you're taking it in January, you have March and June to think about. If you're taking it in March, you have June, July, and all the fall and winter administrations to think about. So there's always more opportunities. Law school admission, rolling admissions matters much less than it used to. So applying later in the cycle is not a big deal. Law schools waitlist and defer more and more applicants each cycle to wait and see who else will come along. So if you have to delay your applications by a couple months, that really doesn't matter very much at all. And if you had to wait until the next cycle to apply, what would be the worst possible outcome of that? How would you spend that extra entire year before law school. Really take the time to work through best case scenarios, worst case scenarios for if the LSAT does well, if the LSAT goes well or not, or if you have to postpone or delay or retake or reapply. All of those possibilities, what do they actually look like for you? When you flesh them out, how bad are they really? If you really take the time to imagine these different possible scenarios, you can hopefully reduce the stress and anxiety associated a bit with this particular LSAT administration. And now finally, for the biggest LSAT mistake of all, mistake number 7, trying out something new on LSAT test day when you've never done it on a practice test before. A lot of times, due to the stress of the real thing and the importance that you're placing upon it, when one little thing doesn't go right for you, maybe one question doesn't go your way, you're confused, you're getting bogged down, you're stuck, and then you decide to totally change your plan of attack, whether it be pacing or whether it be a question solving strategy. If you've never done it before on a practice test, don't do it on the real thing. You've hopefully and probably done at least 5 to 10 timed full-length practice tests before taking the real thing. So you've had time to try out a wide variety of question-solving strategies, whether it being making multiple diagrams for logic games, or reading the question stem versus the stimulus first on logical reasoning, or your note-taking strategy for reading comp. Whatever it is, you've done this several times on timed practice exams, timed sections, and just untimed practice as well. But suddenly on test day, you decide to do something different, it's probably not going to go well. So for that reason, I would recommend stick to what you know, stick to what you've been doing. You have that practice under your belt. So just treat LSAT test day as if it were just another timed exam. And one day, if your exam is released, it'll be yet another one of those numbered practice tests that future LSAT takers do before their real thing. So try to view it from that perspective. And also, again, remember that this is not your only LSAT opportunity. You could retake it if you wanted to. So keep all of these in mind. Try to avoid these common pitfalls and mistakes. All the best to you on LSAT test day whenever you're taking it. Please feel free to reach out if you need anything at all. I'm here for you, and I wish you all the best on the LSAT. Take care.